Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at Grace Financial Coaching, and I am very excited to welcome Kristin Tucker today. Kristin Tucker is a financial coach and more. She believes that money touches everything and everything touches money. That is the truth. And that's her central philosophy as a financial coach. And she helps guide individuals and couples through their financial lives with her company, Family Home Works. She focuses on purposeful family life and making value-based decisions to create the life her clients desire. Good morning, Kristin. How are you?
Good morning.
So happy to have you. So tell me a
Thank
little
you.
bit about your coaching practice and how you help your clients.
Yes, so thank you for having me. I love working with families as well as individuals just to help them figure out how to manage their money for today as well as their tomorrow. So, like you said, values-based, very purpose-driven. So, what do you want your family to look like today? And what do you want it to be in the future? So, I like to call it legacy living. Let's live our legacy today, but manage our money well.
Yeah, I love that. So what do you do? I've had, as soon as you said purpose driven, it reminded me of a client I had a couple years ago. And she calls me and she goes, I know you can help me, blah, 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 blah. And we get to the part about what are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't have any.
Mm.
And that was the first time that ever happened to me. I had always had clients who said, I need to get out of debt. I need to open up more money. I need to buy a house. I need to send my kids to college. She's like, I don't really have one. I just know that what I'm
Oh.
doing is not right. And that was one of the hardest clients I ever worked with.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Because sometimes I think people do get stuck in the moment and it's hard for them to look even to tomorrow.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't in a bad financial position. It wasn't like we had $100,000 or $200,000 of debt. I think maybe there was a car payment and that was it.
Mm.
But there were no goals. So when you work with people and they have these purposes, what are some of those purposes you work with that you see a lot of?
Yeah, certainly with my families, their purpose is to have a good family life. And when I say good, everyone defines that differently. So, what
Right.
do we want our family to look like? So, for instance, some families, they're very mission driven. So, we want to be able to go on mission trips. We want
Oh,
to
okay.
serve our community well. So, that affects our money, right? So, we have to spend it differently. Some are very much, we travel with our family. We want to explore, let our kids see what the world looks like. So that looks different too. We have to plan. That has to be part of your budgeting plan in order to do that. And if we have these big obstacles like debt or other things in the way, we've got to work through them. And sometimes we have to decipher what really is most important. If I've
Yeah.
got kids involved in 20 activities that cost me a lot of money, I may not be able to travel too.
I literally can't even with the cost of kids sports these days.
I know.
It's out of control.
Right.
I have a friend of a friend who we just happened to be in conversation recently, and he was talking about how when he was growing up, actually in Colorado,
Mhm.
it was $20 for his family to sign him up for T-ball, and they didn't have the $20.
Wow.
His comparatively speaking, he said
Mhm.
his kids today, it's $285 per kid for the baseball league. And the older one is now participating in travel baseball, and
Oh, that's expensive.
his baseball bats are $350 a piece.
Mhm.
I almost had a heart attack.
Yes.
He goes, and by the way, he has 3 bats. Like, oh,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
a whole other level, the
It
involvement that
really
kids
is. It
have
really
in
is.
activities these days. Yeah. So
Yeah,
how
and
do
so
you
I help
balance
families
how do you
decipher
balance your
through
kids
that.
wanting
Mhm.
to be involved, but the costs as well? Like, how do we
Right.
say, "Sorry, you can't do
Yes.
that"?
The saddest call I ever got was from a retired couple who said, "We spent all our money on sports and activities for our kids. Now we have very little in retirement. What do we do?" That gave
Oh,
more meaning to what I do for the
yeah,
younger families. Mhm.
yeah,
But that
definitely.
was so sad.
Because, I mean, what were their options to become a burden on their family? on the
No.
family that they had given so much
So
to
much to,
20
right.
years earlier.
And they regretted it and didn't regret it.
Right.
So we have to start from here, moving forward. What can we do? And let's look at our options.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that
Mhm.
is really tough. So that is a wonderful story, but how do we get families to actually take action on that? Because you can tell that story to a 30-year-old mom and dad, right?
Mhm.
But they might be like, no, 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 it's okay. We're not going to be that way. And
Right.
our kid's going to play football. Our kid's going to play
Mhm.
hockey, two of the most expensive sports to play, right? So
Mhm.
how do you impart that knowledge on a 30-year-old who really
Right.
can't see what life's going to be like at 65?
So you have to ask some really good questions and almost forecasting questions, right? So what would it look like if you do this today? What is that going? How's that going to impact your future? Let's just kind of figure that out. And people have to make their own choices, but I want them to go in with their choices with good knowledge.
Yeah. Have we ever had a situation where you just had to say, you can't do this? This is gonna
Yeah.
you're telling me you want X, but you're doing Y right now,
Mhm.
and you can't do this. Has that ever
Yes.
happened?
I usually say something like, you can spend your money wherever you want, but there's consequences both ways.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah,
look at that.
definitely. And that consequence of all those kids' activities,
Hmm.
looking back 30, 40 years later, my goodness, that must have been pretty heartbreaking.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
let's talk about the legacy living. How does one
Mhm.
currently live their legacy?
Yes. So I believe that has to be based on your values and what you want people to remember you for, right? And I learned this honestly from my dad. And now I'm start really paying attention to other people, because when my dad was a farmer and a teacher, right? But when on his as in his last days of life, he had teenagers coming back from college to say goodbye.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
thought when I was 20 years old, I was not going to leave college and say goodbye to an 85-year-old man laying in a hospital bed. And I thought, what is this about? And so I started looking and listening to people about how he lived those last 20 years of his life in retirement. And what he also left, he had been giving scholarships to people, and he left a scholarship fund that we as his children now get to distribute. And we kind of know what kinds of kids he was wanting to give scholarships to.
Did you know he was doing that at the time?
No.
Stop it. And he was doing it for
We knew
20
a little
years.
bit. We knew a little bit, not to the extent that it was. So then I thought, okay, he lived a legacy not with a lot of money. So his legacy was about how he lived his life and how he impacted people. Yes, he was able, because he managed his money well, to leave a good scholarship fund for us to manage for him. But it was all about how he lived his life.
That is
So I think we need
incredible.
to all choose to live our legacy now.
That is absolutely incredible. And I can't get over the
Mhm.
fact that you guys didn't know, that you didn't
Yeah.
know the extent of it.
Yes, we knew about it, but not the extent. That is exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
He got a, um, what was it? He said he got a bouquet of flowers, or we did, that said, to my greatest fan ever, because she was in sports and he went to every single one of her games.
Oh
And
my
I thought,
gosh.
wow, he made an impact on that young lady.
Wow. That's
Hmm.
unbelievable. Oh
Yes.
my gosh. What did your
Hmm.
father teach?
And mathematics.
Okay. So everybody had to have him at some point.
Yes, including me, because it was a small farm community. And yeah, you know what
Oh,
it's like to have your dad for a teacher.
oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that. So you guys went
Yes.
to the school at which he taught.
Hmm.
Oh
Yes,
my
we
gosh.
did.
No. No, that's like those people who work with their spouse. I'm like, there's something wrong with you guys. I don't know how you do
Right.
this.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
amazing. So, would you say that your father was good with money his whole life, as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes. There were
Okay.
probably some principles that I wouldn't follow now that he did, as a farmer, but
Mm,
he managed it really well.
yeah.
He
Lots
looked
of
at,
debt in farming.
yeah, he inherited some. My mom inherited some of that, but he would see it as, if I purchase more land, he looked at the ROI on it. So,
Right, right. It's a
mhm.
different mindset for
Yes,
sure. Yeah,
but
I get it.
I didn't know people took out loans on cars because my dad never did.
Oh no,
My
yeah,
mom
me
and
neither.
dad. I did know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
you can get a loan.
I grew up with the buy a used car for under $5,000, and then as you know, things got more expensive, buy a used car for under 10 grand. Yeah, no, I've never had a car payment myself either. And that was just based on how my parents lived, basically.
Right. So see that there was a living legacy for you, right? You didn't even realize.
Right.
So
You
how
should
we
have seen
manage
me.
our
I
money.
tried to help a friend. I was driving a friend around to lease a new car, and I was sitting in these finance offices, and I'm like, I didn't even understand. I'm an adult, and I'm like, I don't get it. This doesn't sound like a very good deal. But it was literally, that's something that when I have clients who have car leases, I struggle with, because I'm like, I don't know that I really understand how this works, or it really is as bad as it sounds.
But you have background knowledge, right, that you're bringing
Yes.
to the table.
Right, exactly. To at least, I would say, the background knowledge of, you don't have to do it this way, right? There are other options out there. I think if I was somebody whose family leased cars, it would limit in my brain the options that my clients have, because I'd have to kind of reteach myself.
Right.
Yeah. So Kristin, I created this show to help other people realize we all make financial mistakes, but hopefully we can learn from the experience of others. So what is the dumbest thing you've ever done with money?
Okay. Well, this is a good story for sure. So realize, we didn't know what we know now, but we gave into peer pressure, basically. We wanted a house. Early in our marriage, we wanted a house. This is in the mid 80s into the early 90s. So if anybody knows their economic history, it wasn't really a good time, but we borrowed a down payment.
Okay.
And we got into a home during the lending time, right? While we're being approved. I'm a teacher. It's in the spring. I find out that my job is being eliminated, so I don't have a contract for the following year. We tell the lender, and they said, "Oh, no problem." This happens to teachers all the time. We got a loan. We thought in today's world, this seems wild, but it was at 8%. So we were like, woohoo, 8%. Because
8% back then was,
right.
Yeah, I think my parents were at 18%.
Yes, it had come down like, woohoo.
Yeah.
So look at us. So we're in this really awesome, cute house. 1 year later, so I don't get a contract. All right. So we owe on that. We owe on our down payment. 1 year later, work slows down for my husband. He's a contractor, electrical contractor. Work slows down. We don't have money coming in. I get a part-time teaching job. He has to go to Connecticut to work for 2 weeks, hoping things will turn around. Our house payment was 50% of our take-home pay. I'm not sure how we did it, but we did it. We never lost our house. We never missed a payment. We're not sure how.
Right.
Thankfully, things turned around. When he came back from Connecticut, we were ready to sell. But at this time, which hardly ever happens, our house was worth less than we purchased it for.
Right. Which is, again, everyone remembers that's what happened in 2008 as well, too.
Yes. So it was kind of like, yeah. So anyway, we made it through, but we believe it kind of set us up for, it takes a while to recover from a mistake like that financially, even when income starts coming in again, it takes a while. So
psychologically, would you say it takes a while psychologically?
Yes. As well as I think financially too, because we still owed, on that down payment, we still, we didn't have any credit card debt at that time. We had already gotten rid of that.
Okay.
But yes, but I still had a student loan.
Oh, God. Of course.
So,
cannot be a teacher without a student loan.
Right. Exactly. So I would say that was one of the very dumbest things we ever did. We look back and say, we could have waited. We could have waited just 1 year and then we would have known. But it was the peer pressure. I need a house. I need a house. Everyone else is buying a house. And we had friends who were walking away from houses, but we
Wow.
still needed a house.
Right. That peer pressure still exists today.
Mhm.
But would you agree with the statement that it doesn't exist as much anymore?
From a housing standpoint,
Yeah.
I th yeah, you're probably right. Not as much as it did back then. I think
I
young
tend to
couples still.
find, yeah, the Gen Z, the younger millennials,
Mhm.
some of them have no interest in a house, which is
That's
maybe
it.
not the
Yes.
best idea either.
Right. Right.
But there's
Mhm.
been this kind of swing in,
Mhm.
oh, well, I don't want to cut the grass every weekend. I want to go to brunch
Exactly.
and I don't want,
They're more adventurous. We wanna travel. We wanna live life and not be tied to a home. You're right.
right,
Mhm.
right. And
So
that
it's
is
different. So there may be a different kind of peer pressure, right? When it comes to how we spend our money.
excellent point. Didn't even think
Mhm.
about that. Right. There is
Mhm.
still a peer pressure there for those kids, quote unquote,
Mhm. Yes,
and
for
that
us.
generation. Right. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, kids can't buy houses, but in my head, they're kids.
Mhm.
But right. If I said out loud to you, you're going to spend, and I grew up in New York. So you're going to spend $750,000.
Mhm.
You're not going to be able to go out on the weekends anymore. You're going to be cutting grass. You're going to be maintaining a pool. You're going to be painting bedrooms.
Right.
You're like, why on God? If I said it that way, why on God's green earth would anyone want to buy a house?
That's right. I don't want to.
It sounds terrible. You're going to
Right.
be fighting with
Mhm.
contractors. You're going to have,
Mhm.
the garage floor is going to need to be repoured. I mean,
Yes.
fridges are going to die. Why would anyone want to purchase a house when you spun it that way?
Mhm. Yeah. But sometimes we need those reality checks, right?
Right, right. Yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think you are definitely onto something when you said that the younger generations want to travel more. I think they're more experience based
Mhm. For
in
sure.
their desires and their
Yeah.
goals. Do you work with a lot of people in that younger generation, Gen Z, younger millennials?
No,
Okay.
mine are more midlife, I guess you would say,
Mhm.
40s to 50s. Yeah.
I always tell people when they're younger and they call me, I say, "I'm glad you're calling me now because otherwise you'd be calling me in 15 years anyway."
Right. Yes. Yes. Yes.
But it
For
is
sure.
definitely.
You want to warn those people, right? Going, please, please, please
Yes,
don't make
you
these
wanna get them
mistakes.
early, but like you
Mhm.
said, the priorities aren't always in the
Mm-mm.
right, not necessarily the right
Yes.
places, but aren't there yet, for sure.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
Kristin, what would you do if you guys could go back in time with
Mhm.
this housing, error?
Right. Right. If I could go back in time and I would talk to ourselves, I would say, stay where you're at. You're paying really low rent right now
Mm,
compared to your house payment. What if you saved that, pretended you had a house payment and saved that? And then you would be in a much better place. Save for a down payment
yeah,
and make sure you can afford that.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
we didn't have an emergency fund either. I forgot that piece.
ooh,
Yeah.
and you came out relatively unscathed.
Mhm.
Ooh,
Yes. And I think a myth that I believe too, but this probably helped us make it through. Frugality does not equal good money management. I could be a very frugal person and save every single penny, but that doesn't mean you're managing your money well. So,
no,
but that skill is probably what helped us make it through.
yeah,
If that makes
definitely.
sense. Yeah.
And then when you guys came back into a more regular income to a place where did you find you still held on to some of those frugal habits?
Oh, yeah. I still
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. We still haven't
One
gotten over
time,
it.
though, I have to tell you, one time my husband said, we need to have a heart to heart. We're going broke saving money. And what he meant is this was when we were raising our kids, and I'd say, look what I bought. And I'd show him the receipts, but look, 50% off, 50% off, 50% off on clothes, on
Oh,
toys, on, food, even,
yeah.
stockpiling because it was 50 cents
It
or
was on
something.
sale.
It was on sale. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. That was a
Yeah.
big turning around point for me personally.
Wow.
Mhm.
I recorded a podcast for another podcast last night, and we got into the conversation of communication between spouses.
Mhm.
How long do you think your husband waited until he finally said, we have to sit down and have a heart to heart?
Yes. Wow. I'm going to ask him that question.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess, knowing him, because he's a very thoughtful, methodical person, I'm going to guess at least 6 months.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That mindset of, unfortunately, I see, Laura, good morning, Laura. Laura says, look, honey, I saved $3.50 buying laundry detergent to add to our stock.
Yep.
So true, Laura, right?
Yep.
And I am guilty of that as well, too. And right now, we're recording this at the end of 2022. We've gone through the COVID pandemic and we've gone through the supply chain issues. And I'm not kidding you. My husband is active duty military, but I jokingly say this to him. I said, I get PTSD at the grocery store sometimes. I see stuff that we couldn't get for 4 months.
Yes.
And I have to sit there and say, it's probably not going to happen again. Right. Don't go crazy. For whatever reason, in this area where I am in the country, in January of this year, 2022, we couldn't get chicken. We could not get chicken. I don't know why. I have pictures. I wrote blog posts about it.
Interesting.
We could not get chicken.
Yes.
And so for a few months after that, every time I saw chicken, I had like a freezer full of chicken. Meat people. It was crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing, right, Laura? PTSD over milk, chicken, toilet
paper. Yes, for sure. Because I will tell you, I always have a good stock, and I'm always like, should I buy just one more small package, right?
It's crazy how those habits stick with us, right?
And it didn't take long. That was only 1 year.
Right.
And probably where we couldn't like toilet paper.
Right. Oh yeah, that was the crazy.
But that was scary for sure. Like, what are we going to do?
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, I think it was last winter when I went to buy soup and the soup aisle was empty. And I was like, what? Like, no, go to another aisle. That one's fully stocked. That one, what's going on? But it was a weird reaction, personal reaction I had.
Yeah. And it, we live in a time where the shelves should be fully stocked at all times. And we've gotten used to that, right? I'm trying to think of the last time before COVID, and it was probably the gas crisis of the 70s and 80s, right? When you had something that was, wait, we used to have access to this every minute of every day, and now we don't.
Yes. Yes.
I remember my father telling me about the lines that he would have to wait in New York to fill up.
For fill up, yes. I remember when you could only get like $10 worth of gas. We were on family vacation and we had to plan out where we could stop, like from one town to the next, because you could only get a certain amount.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. We had that, we just had the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy on the East Coast in the Northeast. And that was also, it was like that as well too, where it was being rationed. And the majority of people who were alive didn't remember that happening.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes, when I tell those stories, like, what?
How old are you? No, it really happened only 30 years ago.
I promise it wasn't that. Yeah.
And then imagine, I'm trying to think of like my grandparents, the victory gardens of World War II.
Yes.
And things like that are so foreign to us today that you'd have to sit down with somebody with a history book in front of you to prove that it actually happened.
Yeah. Or sugar being rationed.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. That's right.
My grandma used to talk about that.
Oh, it's so crazy. It's just
we're
so
history.
crazy.
We're living our history, right?
I know. And just when we think that's not going to happen again, right? Something else happens. So I think what you're doing to prepare the families you work with to do that stuff, to be prepared, to have that legacy living. I love that phrase. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's what it's really all about when it comes to the financial coaching side of things.
For sure. Yes.
Awesome. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your honesty and about your financial wonders.
Yes. Everyone, please have an emergency fund, save for a down payment, be ready.
There you go. Exactly. Try not to get 8% interest, but at this point, you might not have an option. So.
Right. For sure. Yes.
All right, everybody, join us next week for another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. And make sure to subscribe to the Grace Financial Coaching YouTube channel. Thanks again, Kristin.
Thank you. Have a great day.